Hi, this is Peter Wooding, and welcome to the first ever Window on the World podcast with my father, Dan Wooding, the founder of Assist News Service. He's based in Southern California, but through the wonders of technology, I'm in the UK. We're able to present this podcast together. Now, Dad, it's wonderful to share this with you. Before we talk about some of the interviews that we're going to take listeners around the world on today, those that aren't familiar with Assist, just give us a bit of the background to Assist News.
Well, Pete, it's a news service that I began about 20 years ago. We're based in Lake Forest, California, and we have stories that come in from around the world. We mainly cover stories about the persecuted church, about world missions, about popular culture, but also about fascinating people that are making a difference. We have about 2,600 media subscribers and then many thousands more around the world that receive our stories into their inbox. And basically, we want people to be informed about what God is doing in His world.
Now, we got some fascinating stories for the podcast today. We're going to hear some clips from some interviews. Now, first of all, I understand you were in Albuquerque, New Mexico, for the 25th anniversary of Joy Junction. Now, that's New Mexico's largest homeless shelter, and it was started by a fellow Brit, Jeremy Reynalds, who actually found himself homeless when he moved to America. Just tell us a bit more about Jeremy's story.
Jeremy's an extraordinary man. He's from Bournemouth in England, and after he'd become a believer at about 20, he emigrated to the United States thinking everything was going to be great, and eventually found himself homeless. And this experience transformed his life, and it actually led him to becoming the founder of Joy Junction, which is New Mexico's largest homeless shelter. So let's hear a little bit of the interview I did with him recently. Now, what was the story of you getting homeless? And here you are in the land of plenty, and everybody's got a big car, and they've got lots of money, and you become homeless. What happened?
It's a great question, Dan, because I felt for many years I had a calling in my life to full-time ministry.
Yeah.
Now, the way that I believe God has shown me is just like the psalmist David had a calling on his life to be king, but there was a distinct time gap or time lapse between him being called to be king and when he actually became king. So just because God says, hey, Dan, I want you to be in ministry, you have to drop everything, give up your job, and refuse to work and say, God, take care of me. It's in God's timing and in God's way. So I told my new wife at the time, I said, hey, God's called me to be a minister. I'm not working. She was understandably less than thrilled. And we had a child also. I had a stepson and a child by that time also. So I was doing some volunteer prison ministry and basically wouldn't work and ended up becoming homeless. Had a terrible, awful attitude. So in late 81, early 82, we were homeless. Some friends in Titusville, Florida, told Sylvia, they said, well, we'll take care of you and the kids. When that Jeremy guy, when he gets some brains and really starts listening to God, then we'll consider taking care of him, or we'll take care of him. So the scariest thing of all, Dan, I on the end of January 1982, I was on the New Mexico-Texas border. Not a penny in my pocket. Well, actually, I had a few dollars in my pocket, and was homeless. I was discouraged. I was depressed.
When you say you were homeless, what did that mean?
I was literally on the streets. My wife and kids were back in Florida. I was on the streets on the New Mexico-Texas border. We had couch surfed for a while. I thought I'd go and stay with some friends in Arizona, but didn't have enough money to get there. Literally, Dan, it was freezing. Rain or sleet. Maybe snow was coming down. It's been a long time, obviously. And nothing worse than seeing a motel, a brightly illuminated sign that says, HBO, cozy rooms, clean beds, $15 a night, and you have like $12 in your pocket. I felt desperate, Dan. I stuck my thumb out like this. The spray from the vehicles on the road was getting me wet. I grabbed some newsprint, some like old copies of whatever local news media they had, tried to sleep, and all the bumps and all the dirt clods and the stones from the grass like nudged me in the wrong places or poked me in the wrong places. So it ended up at night. 9 o'clock I was desperate, I gave up. And there was a little restaurant that closed at 9 o'clock. And it had like a little shed with like a lawnmower and some stuff behind it. There was a fiberglass mat or a fiberglass piece. Grabbed the fiberglass piece, and I spent my night that night on fiberglass. But you know what? It taught me something. It taught me to be grateful. It taught me to trust God. Then the next morning, a trucker came by. I had my thumb out, which was cold, wet, tired. And he must have thought I was crazy. He said, where do you want to go? I said, where are you going? He says, where do you want to go? I said, wherever you're going. Yeah. He gave me a salami or bologna sandwich. Never had a sandwich that tasted so good in my life. Yeah. And ended up a few weeks later, a few months or two later, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Of course, the site of the infamous prison riots in the early 80s. But by that time, Dan, I had come to a very important conclusion. I thought, God, if I'm going to be in ministry, it needs to be me asking you as in God, not me begging people, not finagling, not begging, not conniving. You're going to have to take care of me. I will ask for stuff. I will ask you to take care of people you give me to take care of, but I will not ask for stuff for my own needs.
That was Jeremy Reynalds, the founder of the Joy Junction homeless shelter in New Mexico. And if people want to find out more, they can go to joyjunction.com. Now, you've always been fascinated with Africa, having been born in Nigeria of my grandparents who were missionaries out there. And so it comes as no big surprise that you recently interviewed Princess Zulu from Zambia, who's written a book about her life with HIV called Warrior Princess. So let's hear a clip from that interview.
Yes, I was born in a well-to-do family, according to Zambian standards, when I was born. And my father, he really took the princess sort of thing on me in particular seriously. But things began to change. We began to see changes in my father. The first one to die was my baby sister Linda from a disease that no one knew what was happening. And eventually she died without making it up to 2 years. And then my father, also a man who had worked from a very humble beginning. He was a gardener with one of the colonial masters of our time. And when Zambia got its independence in 1964, he left him with his company. And my father ended up rising to a position of a commanding officer under the Rail Line Company. So that's the time when I was born. But in 1986-87, things were beginning to change. My father was no longer the same energetic man, was no longer the same man who could make very good decisions, and the company let him go. And that was the beginning of really my story. We ended up moving to the village, and there we began to live a life like any other village child, and not having running water in our house became a reality. Walking several miles to school became a reality. In a way, we were a little bit still fortunate that we still have shoes as you go to school, but most of our friends didn't have that.
And he was gradually getting sicker. And in those days, there wasn't very much known about HIV. It was sweeping across the Western world, but in Africa, it was just beginning. Did your father know at the time what the problem was?
Yeah, no, actually, you're absolutely right. At that time this is now 1990, early 1990, you begin to see the symptoms of both my mom and dad. They didn't know. And people thought, well, maybe because they had a better life before in the city, they were driven wherever they went. The company gave him some car. And now here he was working on the farm on a daily basis, walking several miles on foot. They thought maybe that's the reason. And of course, Africa being a very spiritual continent, some people thought, oh, maybe it's demonic, or is it witchcraft? Those were the myths around that time. But my mom did something very unique. One night she just called me and said, Princess, I want to speak to you because I've looked within the family and I realized that you are the one who's going to take care of this family. And you could sense really her brokenness, lack of a better word. You could sense that she was withholding tears. And she said, I am so sorry. I'm going to leave you with literally almost nothing, but I know you be strong. And she encouraged me to be strong and to be of good courage. And I went back to school, and when I came back, I was called back. My mother was almost dying. And I don't think both of them knew what was taking them, and that was a challenge at that time.
So your father contracted it first, and then your mother? Presumably she got it from him?
Yeah, most likely that's how it happened. But as you know, that you can't know. Most people do not even know when they got infected. Yeah. Most people don't even know who gave it to them in the first place. But that is not even the end of the story. Then I became the one to take care of my brothers and sisters. We were 9 of us altogether. So maybe you've heard of the term called child-headed household. It's where you, as a young person, I was 17 years old, I became the one to take care of my whole family. And it was a challenge because we didn't know where our next meal would come from. We didn't know how we are going to continue going to school. So fast forward, that led me to getting married at the age of 18. And in the process, I also found out that I was HIV positive.
So what was it like, Dad, meeting Princess Zulu?
Well, it was very fascinating. I interviewed her in a hotel in Anaheim, next door to Disneyland, but a very courageous lady, and is now working with World Vision and bringing the plight of people in Africa with HIV to the American people. A very extraordinary lady. And by the way, if people would like to know more about her, just go to www.princesszulu.com.
Now, we moved to the United States way back in 1982, almost 30 years ago, and it used to take me to these Saturday night concerts at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. Now, this was the home of the Jesus People, and I understand you went to a reunion of the Jesus People recently.
Yeah, it was very fascinating. For those who know the history of the early days of that movement, which began in a big tent in Calvary Chapel, there were people there like Chuck Gerard, Barry Maguire, and Karen Lafferty. Now, Karen wrote that beautiful song, Seek Ye First the Kingdom of God. And so I was able to talk to Karen and learn a little bit about her story. So here's a clip from that interview.
God got a hold of me and brought me out to California. I thought to be salt and light in the entertainment world. I didn't know that God was really moving out here.
So tell us that story. Where were you living and how did you find the Lord?
Well, I was raised in Baptist church, and Baptists are good about teaching you the gospel. So I accepted the Lord early, but, like a lot of young people, I, found other things I was interested in, and I never was not believing, but I didn't know what it was to really walk strongly with the Lord.
And which part of the country were you there?
I'm from New Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I was. So after my university days, I went out on the road entertaining, and that was the kind of my hard times, and God saved me out of that, though. It was down in New Orleans that I actually got right with the Lord through Campus Crusade for Christ.
So what happened then?
Yeah, God sent an old friend of mine that had gotten involved with Crusade on one of the college campuses and came to visit me and shared with me about what walking every day with the Lord was about. Yeah. And I got hungry for it, and that's when I responded.
Wow. And then you heard about the Calvary Chapel, or did this?
Not at all.
You'd already moved?
The Lord just spoke to me that I should continue to be an entertainer and be salt and light in the entertainment world. So that's why I moved to the Los Angeles area to do that. And I just happened to have an aunt and uncle I could live with in Costa Mesa. Oh. And I was praying. I said, oh, God, if there's any Christians out there, I need to hook up with them. And I had no idea how God was really moving amongst young people there.
Wow. So what was your first time at the church, and what were your thoughts when you saw all these hippies?
Well, it was the second day I was there. My aunt and uncle and cousins were going to take me to San Diego Zoo afterwards, and I said, so have we come back after church and we change clothes? And they said, oh, no, just go ahead and wear whatever you're going to wear at the zoo to church. I said, really? We didn't do that as Baptists, But so I did, and I saw them singing love, 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 and all that. And I was just pretty blown away and just started fellowshipping there. And rest is kind of history. I was already writing songs about the Lord and got involved with just our musicians' fellowship there. But that's what really launched me into music ministry. And I did get a good entertainment job locally, but I remember the very night that I knew God was calling me to full-time ministry.
Karen Lafferty there, and if you want to find out more about the work she's doing today, you can go to www.musiciansformissions.com/KL. Now, I hope you've enjoyed our first podcast. What did you think? How did you think we did, Dad?
I think it was pretty good for our first attempt. It's very bizarre. We'll let people into a secret. We're doing this across the Atlantic on Skype, and we're recording into our own recorders. So if you're interested and would like to have more information about Assist, just go to assistnews.net and you can actually get a free subscription. And also you could read stories there from Peter Wooding and myself.
And people can hear your regular interviews on your own radio show as well. Tell us how people can hear that.
Yeah, it's a show called Front Page Radio, and just go on to the Assist website, assistnews.net, and then click on Listen to Front Page Radio, and you can hear some of the latest interviews there.
And we'd love to hear your comments on the podcast. We want to make this as interactive as possible. What email should people use, Dad, to send in their comments on our first Window on the World podcast?
Very simply, just assistnews@aol.com, and for my attention, Dan Wooding, or if you want to contact Peter.
And my email address is assisteurope@yahoo.co.uk. And it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me from across the Atlantic.